Hello, thanks for joining us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguela. Good governance is a critical factor in assessing public managers all over the world. In fact, without good governance, social, economic, and political progress is difficult to attain and almost impossible to guarantee. Interestingly, good governance is the bedrock of any modern democracy. But there could be challenges in promoting good governance. Now, this manifests in areas of rule of law, transparency, accountability, and citizen participation, among others. For a nation to achieve sustainable prosperity, such a nation must be up to the task of making strategic decisions about resource control and allocation on one hand, and efficient utilization and investment of such resources on the other hand. And this entails strategic decisions and planning. During President Bola Tinubu's national broadcast on the 31st of July, he made salient pointers to some of the plans this administration has in store for the citizens through various intervention programs already being aligned. Now that will cut across all sectors to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy. While also acknowledging the present challenges confronting the nation, in his words, he said, and I quote, "To be blunt, Nigeria could never become the society it was intended to be as long as such small, powerful, yet unelected groups hold enormous influence over our political economy and the institutions that govern it. I had promised to reform the economy for long-term good by fighting major imbalances that had plagued our economy. Ending the subsidy and the preferential exchange rate system were key to this fight. This fight is to define the fate and future of our nation." End of quote. Well, analysts say this entails collective efforts for good governance to thrive. Our focus on Platform is upscaling interventions towards good governance, and our guest is Professor Nuhu Yaqub. He's a former Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for
Good to have you on Platform.
Thank you very much.
All right, and let's take you through Professor Yaqub's profile. Professor Nuhu Yaqub majored in political science and graduated from Bayero University. He holds a master's degree in comparative politics at the University of Toronto, Canada, and doctorate degree at the Institute of Development Studies, the University of Sussex, Brinton. Professor Yaqub has taught for several years. He has served creditably both within and outside the university system. He also served as the Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of administrative affairs and heading ex officio many important committees at Usmanu Danfodio University. In June 2004, he was appointed the Vice Chancellor of the University of Abuja, where he worked assiduously for 5 years. He was also the pioneer Vice Chancellor of the Sokoto State University. He also served as the Dean of the School of Postgraduate Studies at Nile University of Nigeria. He was an excellent examiner to several universities, examined candidates for higher degrees in universities in Malaysia and South Africa, and has published a variety of academic journals. Professor Yaqub holds the national honor in the category of the Office of the Order of the Federal Republic in recognition of his various contributions to the nation. Other professional and association-based bodies have equally bestowed on him with various awards for services to humanity. Well done, Prof.
Thank you very much.
You've done very well for yourself.
Thank you, and for the nation.
For the nation, indeed.
That's right.
Okay, this is the part where we introduce our panelists, Laraba Mure. She's becoming a regular face on Platform, and we're always pleased to have you, Laraba. Thank you.
For always having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Prof.
Yes.
We're looking at upscaling interventions towards good governance. I'm sure you listened to the President broadcast just a few days ago,
That's right.
where he talked so much about various intervention programs. But before we delve into that, former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan says good governance as this is a single factor if we're talking about reduction of poverty and ensuring that every nation, or nations rather, work assiduously to see the growth and prosperity of the citizens and development of the nation at large.
That's right.
From your perspective, if you want to paint a picture for good governance, what will it be?
Well, when you say good governance, it's already qualified. And it also means that if care is not taken, you get bad governance.
Yes.
And bad governance will, entail issues like corruption, oppression,
Yeah.
dictatorship, and a lack of accountability and transparency. So if you take this as the takeoff point, then it means that good governance will completely overcome all these drawbacks that will not enable the citizenry to enjoy the benefit of governance instituted within a particular polity. And it's very important that this point about good governance is stressed as much as possible. Why do I say this? Because those who go into government do not, except the military dictators that we had had, for a very long time in this country, unfortunately, because they actually did not even add, a piece of what governance is all about. All they knew was to impose themselves on us, do whatever they like to do, destroy the issues of accountability, and it was also, self-serving. Generally, we had a very long stretch of military intervention in this country. For me, I do not regard them as, or their periods of governance as periods that we should actually be happy about in this country. Because when they came, the argument always is that, the civilians were not doing what they were supposed to do in terms of governing this country effectively. What did we get? It was a tale of disappointment. It was a tale of, authoritarian dictatorship. There was never a time Nigerians, because they could appoint you today, commissioner or minister, tomorrow they will take you out of it, no matter or whether or not you are effective. So you don't have any yardstick to judge the effectiveness of their regimes. And of course, you can also not also, you cannot also separate them for the amount of corruption that has been engendered.
But if we fast forward, Prof,
yes,
looking at our present realities, good governance, according to UNDP, they said it's about, striving to upscale the rule of law. We're talking equity, we're talking transparency, we're talking accountability.
That's right.
Let's paint a picture of our present times now. There's so much we're seeing happening, and looking at the efforts the federal government is making to be in line with what Nigerians expect of them. What are your perceptions?
When you say, we look at the current period, do you want us to look at it from 1999 briefly to date?
Yes.
If we do so, we can also show or talk about, the inability of the civilian rulers to actually appreciate this, all the factors about good governance that you mentioned. There was no accountability. Take Obasanjo's regime, for instance. This was somebody who, at a point in time, was trying to abuse the constitution that he swore on to protect and govern this country. And he wanted to extend his stay in office until, the National Assembly stood up against him. And when he was disappointed, what did he do? He actually organized an election that brought in Yaradua in 2007 that was compromised in terms of integrity and also in terms of, having an election that was fair and credible. That's civilian. Of course, his background was also military, so I'm not surprised. But, and in contrary to this, we had Yar'Adua, who was actually, sworn in as the next president that succeeded him. And he admitted, very unusual in African spectrum of governance, that a leader will come to power and say, election that brought me to office was not credible. He did admit and set up a committee under Justice Uwais. And what is also painful is that the man died. The report that was submitted has never seen the light of day till today. And in one of the significant recommendations of the committee's report was that there is a mindset of Nigerians. And that mindset, derives itself from the fact that you have to be violent, politically violent, to defeat an opponent. Whereas when we talk about democracy, we are actually talking about consensus building among either the contestants or those who are able to go and cast their votes. Somebody will be going to the ballot booth, to the polling booth, and he's armed. Or a contestant will sponsor a thug to go to the polling booth or to the polling booth and scatter the arrangements made to have a transparent election. So we actually have not had it good in terms of transparency, accountability, equity, as well as good governance in this country. So I do not think that one can make it a very strict distinction between civilian rule, not even civil rule, civilian rule and military dictatorship.
Larva.
So you talked about the governance, that's the persons in power. I'd like to bring it back to where it affects us as citizens.
That's right.
And then, it is also said that citizens' participation is vital to any thriving democracy.
Very critical.
Are there examples and initiatives that you can give that Nigerians have taken across the country that has helped good governance? Because I know that we can't talk about the government and also not talk about what the citizens can do to ensure good democracy.
Thank you very much. It is Nigerian Achebe who wrote the book, The Trouble with Nigeria. And the first statement he made was that the problem of Nigeria is squarely the problem of leadership. And anytime I make reference to this quotation, I always add that this statement is incomplete because we have not also zeroed in the role of the followership. How many people are actually in leadership position in this country as compared to the generality or the population size of this country? It's insignificant. We can only have one president, not 200 presidents at the same time in this country. We can only have 37 governors, not 200 million governors in Nigeria at the same time. So the point, therefore, is that the issue of good governance has to be situated squarely in terms of the role played by the contestants, those who eventually emerge as leaders, and the people they try to convince to give them the mandate. And it is not just once, it is not just twice, it is not just 3 times. We've gone into a schedule of elections or changeover of personnel of governance, and you discover that it is the same attitude we get. And I'm saying therefore that why should the followership not learn lessons, critical lessons of, no, this is not what we actually give you the mandate to go and do. And I've not even talked about corruption yet, which is another dimension of the catastrophe that has afflicted democracy in this country. So we really need to go to the basics. And these leaders get there and they throw caution to the winds.
Okay, Prof, if I will come in there.
Yes.
We're seeing from what experts have come out to say, a president who is showing empathy to the plights Nigerians are facing following the removal of subsidy. And during the broadcast, his broadcast on the 31st, he made, some certain interventions, programs, which is expected. When we have interventions, it's expected to translate to good governance, right? Now, let's begin to break down some of those interventions and how it can be beneficial to Nigerians. He talked about the creation of jobs, build factories and businesses through, policy formulation that is already happening in the economy. We're seeing the economic reforms ongoing in the country. What do you make of that?
Let me start by, and to answer your question, let me start by even making reference to the statement credited to Tinubu when he won the election. He said he's not looking for government of national unity, but government of national competence, which is for me, it's a very critical statement from a leader. And based on what you have also said, he has, tried to empathize with the conditions for Nigeria, especially the speech he made on Monday. Yes. It was so clear that he wanted to, or he wants to identify with Nigerians. People are going through difficulties. He's aware of them. And there's no pretense in terms of what he's saying. But the issue now is about implementation.
Which is very key.
Very, very important. How do we get to the point whereby all the promises he has made in the speech, because that speech is actually, for me, is a major manifesto of his coming to office. And the Nigerians have, a very important point to drive at in terms of making sure that he is accountable to what he has said. If we do not get half of what he has promised, of course, it also takes us back to what I have been saying, that, there's still much to be said about democratic development in this country. And if he's able to do 50%, just as people, on reflection, talk about his achievements in Lagos when he was governor of Lagos State, then we can say that he's on the trajectory of actually creating changes in the lives, and of the people, and the kind of governance system that we need to actually institute.
Prof, before Laraba come in, just to chip in this,
yes.
You cannot judge a man without performance.
Yeah.
So let's be patient to see his performance.
No, that's the point I'm making. What the statement I'm making is hypothetical. I say if he can, achieve 50% of what he has promised, certainly. And you compare that performance with previous rulers. What do you get from some of them?
Okay, Prof, as part of the interventions that he said he's going to make in the country, he said that he's going to introduce infrastructural support for funds for states. Now my question is, how do you see this fund positively impacting critical areas like the healthcare, the education, across Nigeria?
Yeah, well, I'm happy that we are talking about infrastructural investment. What are these infrastructures we are talking about? We are talking about, creating roads, especially to farm centers.
Yes.
Whereby we can actually evacuate, the farm produces that, we may have in the agricultural sector. We are talking about ensuring that Nigerians who are, sick or ill can get better medical attention. We are talking of, Nigerians who want to go to school, and it becomes, unaffordable for them. What is he going to do? Okay, these are the issues, and we also talk in terms of, laying, roads, major roads that will actually, because he said when he said he was looking for, going to set up a government of national competence, he made a point. The roads, water is not provided just because to quench people's, thirst. Yeah. But to use it, for instance, if you create dams, it's not just for, consumption of water at that point, but that you are trying to see how you can create facilities for farmers to use the dams. And we can also use these dams to generate electricity.
Yeah.
These are the issues.
Yeah.
And it beats my imagination that since independence, this year is going to be 63 years we have been independent. And we have not gotten out of poverty, underdevelopment. Nigeria is now even boasting of being the country with the highest number of poverty-stricken people.
But Prof, if these funds that are going to be churned out, we talked about the easy access road, healthcare, education. We saw the education loan, students' loan rather, you know, for those who can't afford to go to school in the higher education level. There's also the credit intervention expected to revitalize the manufacturing sector.
Exactly.
Now, these are critical interventions that, if properly utilized, could go a long way, you know, to translate back to the economy. We're all looking at a viable economy. That's the goal of all of this.
Well, I think we're essentially saying the same thing.
Yes.
I have stressed the point that implementation is key.
That's where my question is headed. Where do we draw the line between just dishing out these funds and implementation? Who are those stakeholders? What is expected of them if we must ensure effective implementation? You
know, the previous administration, headed by Buhari, came up with this anchor program.
Yeah.
You know, there was also the issue of giving money to people. And the evidence that we're having now is that even the register of those, you know, that benefited is suspicious. Therefore, it is good, it is commendable that Tinubu has said, this is what I'm going to do in the manufacturing sector. This is what I'm going to do, you know, in the agricultural sector. This is what we should do in the education sector. The issue is, it still boils down to the point about implementation. If you have people or ministers, as in very soon we'll get the ministers, good. You have them and they go there and say, no, let me take care of myself before others, of the intended, you know, targets. The whole thing is defeated. That is the point, and that worries me. It's not that, you know, I mean, we don't have people who will enunciate programs or policies that will seek to actually elevate the conditions, existential conditions of the people. But the issue is that who are the people, as entrusted, right, with such policies, and how diligent are they? How competent are they? I think we have never even seen the worst of governance in this country if we do not, you know, critically assess what happened under Buhari. For instance, aviation is a critical infrastructure in this country. What has happened? We are giving, you know, what has now turned out to be a fact is that the aeroplane that was displayed on the eve of the departure of the Minister of Aviation was something that was, you know, something that was corruptly, you know, embarked upon. What is, I mean, if you have those kind of characters coming into the administration of Tinubu, I'm telling you, and I'm telling Nigerians, we have not taken off yet. Okay, so
I will still want to talk about the signing of the Electricity Student Loan and Data Protection Act. Do you think that do you see that shaping the energy sector or the education sector? Because as an academician, you know, it is something that is going to help the students. Do you see that shaping it? And also, you know, like in the coming years, since it's a policy that he just put and he came into the office, what do you see that policy is going to become for the country?
Well, you see, I'm not a soothsayer. Good.
Well, you're an education.
It's your field. I cannot see what is going to be the future. But I'm just simply saying that you have to begin to think about what are the probabilities. It is probable that we will get it right this time around.
Okay.
It is probable that we'll get it as we have been getting it
Okay.
Good.
And then I also want to ask also, as your role still as an educationist, do you think that your team can have an impact in terms of helping the government to take some certain decisions that can assist them?
Very, very, I mean, certainly. That's why I'm a Nigerian. And that's why I've played all the roles I've played. I mean, based on what Ruth, said about my, biodata earlier. I have been in the education sector since 1972. This is about 51 or so years ago.
Some of us were not born then.
That is the point. That is the point. And in the process, I have groomed Nigerians. Some of them, I remember one time Deputy Governor in Niger State, one Ahmed Ibeto, who also, became ambassador, High Commissioner of Nigeria to South Africa, was my student. The current governor of Niger State was my student. And a number of them, permanent secretaries, even at the federal level and so on and so forth. I have tried as much as possible to contribute to the development of this country. So, to answer your question, yes, I'm available. If anybody wants to, or thinks that I'm capable of contributing to a program that will salvage the existential conditions of Nigerians.
No, but I think what Laraba, the pointer there, is recommendations.
That's what I'm saying.
For the benefit of
even
the
if I'm not
scheme.
there, even if I'm not there, either through my writings or through engagements of this nature, I can come up with, recommendations. For instance, we have the building for the National Library here in Abuja that was started probably under Obasanjo regime. And since he left 2007 till today, that building is not yet completed. Then we'll ask the question, if you want to go and invest in the education sector, is it not important also to look at how you can facilitate learning? How can you, embark, a government will embark on building a library, and we do not have, library of that name in this country. How will, students can be asked to go and read some materials. They don't have the means to buy these materials. Okay. But if they are available in the library. So for me, one of the things they will have to do, especially in the education sector, is that the library that is under construction for several years must be, completed.
All right.
During his regime.
All right, we'll pick up with this conversation. Let's take this break. We'll be back. Please stay tuned.
What are we doing as a nation to, first of all, settle our teeming populace, especially the
NTA's political package with a third eye on the nation's political scene? I am Fisa Ogunfuyi. Welcome.
You have to be very careful giving space to people who are obviously sponsored to further the agenda of some other groups.
There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions in a closed-door sessions. Some of these issues, some of the problems bedeviling of their...
In fact, between June 1st and July 17, 19-point-something billion has left the coffers of the NDDC.
I can say my constituency, they need everything because we don't have anything.
Allah gives power. He endowed people with knowledge and capacity to think for our people. We must not fail, and we will not fail. Your children will get more rewards than what you have because they have a future in this country now. Yes.
Thanks for being there. We're still discussing upskilling interventions towards good governance, which involves you and I. But Prof, You were talking about recommendations for education sector. Let's look at the MSMEs. The president, in his broadcast, he also mentioned 125 billion naira set aside, as part of intervention funds to grow. You agree with me, Prof, that MSMEs are the engine to economic growth, whether we like it or not.
Exactly.
And it's good that there's a pointer there. There's attention tilting to that direction. How would you suggest, rather, or recommend, utilization of these funds effectively?
Well, let me, before I come to answer your question properly, let me also say that this is not the first time we have this kind of policy agenda. It's not the first time. But my concern is that now
it shouldn't be business as usual.
It should not be business as usual. And MSME that we are talking about, we need to actually identify those ones that are quite efficient and effective, either in terms of the products that come out of this particular production site, or we think in terms of those that can also engage many Nigerians in employment.
Yes.
Okay, and those ones that can also produce efficiently to bring down the cost of inflation. These are so when you have these categories set aside, then you can also look at the, if you like, the antecedents of this, MSMEs.
Yeah.
See the ones that have actually been in business and they have been doing well. You don't just go and assemble, mumbo jumbo, kind of assemblage, and then we say, oh, we have given this amount of money to this sector, we have given to this one, and they have given to that one, and so on and so forth. On what basis are we doing, dispensing these sums or facilities to these MSMEs? It must be empirically, assessed.
Yes.
There must be due diligent, supervision, even after you have already given out, the loans and what have you. But if you simply throw money at people, and then now, it falls into the bad hands, and they say, oh, this is my share of the national cake. We're back to square one. That's my problem.
Laraba.
Prof, you just talked about throwing money, to people, and then them thinking that it's a part of the national cake.
That's right.
But then part of the interventions that the president mentioned is the agricultural program of cultivating about 500 hectares of farmlands to farmers. Do you think that it's going to boost our food security, with the support to the adding to the anchors farm borrowers money that we talked about? So how do you think that farmland that he wants to give is going to contribute to our agricultural produce?
Well, I will want to recommend, since we are talking, if people say I should be making recommendation now, I want to start by recommending, that,
based on your expertise.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm going
based on
to
your
start.
expertise.
I'm going to be recommending now. I'm not going to be talking about problems. Let us identify, what is it that is very central in terms of, the food production and consumption of Nigerians. Rice is one of them.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a staple food.
It's a staple food. Now, let us also know areas where this product can be effectively and efficiently, produced. So that when you are giving money, it's not just throwing money at, those who come first or those who, you have interest in and so on and so forth. But that this is indexed to certain deliverables that we expect. Because, I want to assume that Tinubu's regime is not just going to throw money, at those who, come forward to say, oh, I can do this thing. But there must be very stringent examination of the capacity and the honesty of those who are involved in producing these food items. And we should also make sure that what we produce is what Nigerians really need. Yes, I mean, if you go to produce, you know, I mean, you go on production that does not actually add value to the food profile of Nigerians, I think that again is going to be a waste of money.
And you know, Prof, the 50 billion naira each, he said, will be invested to cultivate 150 hectares. Rice and maize, of course, is involved. And let's not forget there is also the intervention of 200,000 metric tons of grains, which has already been approved for distribution. Then what is even more important is the 225,000 metric tons of fertilizers, seedlings, and other equipment, you know, that farmers will need.
Yeah.
You know why I'm stating all of these? Whether we like it or not, these interventions directly affect whether it's large-scale farmers or the smallholder farmers, one way or the other. And the smallholder farmers, and now it's good to see that the attention is tilting to that direction, because fertilizer, inadequate rather, fertilizer has been one of their challenge. So this time around, if you want to, you said you want to talk about recommendations, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Strategically, how should these be narrowed down so it's streamlined so that these farmers, these smallholder farmers, get it? It's very important.
What is required, basically, is to conduct research, to get the targets that we aim at. The small-scale farmers, they are there. I mean, they are very plenty. They are everywhere. How do you ensure that the civil servant or the technocrat that has to give this money or to facilitate the distribution of the fertilizer will ensure that they will get it? This is what we need. There's, you know, it's very critical now in this country that aside from, you know, these expenditures that we are mentioning, there are moral issues that we have not addressed in governance in this country. How do we actually get people who are sincere, people who are honest, people who fear God? I mean, we have seen, you know, clerics that tell lies. We have seen clerics that have also mismanaged resources of either the church or the mosque. I mean, we cannot run away from all this. If we really need to turn you know, to the other side, we need to actually address, you know, the issue of morality now. And if we do not actually add it to the agenda of governance, believe you me, Nigerians have developed thick skins. They are not afraid. They are not even. They do not fear God's wrath on what they do that they know clearly is not correct. So there is, I mean, it was Elijah Ushagari's regime that came up with moral revolution during his regime in the 70s, you know. And later, Metama Sule was, you know, the anchor person who, they call it national orientation that time. You know, and I think at that point also, they began to see that the level of morality and fear of God that, you know, defined the leaders of the First Republic was waning. It is on record. Saddam now went on, Umrah. He was coming. Then we had only two major international airports, Kano and Lagos. He arrived at Kano Airport. And an immigration officer, you know, our custom officer accosted him and said, no, this is a contraband. You cannot bring it into the country except you pay the rate. Adamu Fika also was the one who narrated this in a lecture he gave on Sadona Memorial Lecture series in the 80s or so. And Saddam said, okay, what is the regulation? So this is, you know, the charge for bringing in this item. And there and then, he brought out the check from his pocket and signed the amount to clear, and he was allowed to bring the item into the country. Can we do this now? So, if we do not get to this point of, examining, in fact, it's very critical. Even this screening of the ministerial list we are talking about. Somebody can come, read a very beautiful CV, and everybody's, how come, he's a rabble-rouser, he is able to convince everybody in the Senate. Oh, this guy is going to be competent. Well, of course, some of them are coming from backgrounds that we know. Governors that have performed, who have been brought in, commissioners in the states who have been brought in, young people who are dynamic, who show dynamism. But the issue is, what is the yardstick for measuring everybody's moral integrity? It's critical at this point in time. And I think, I think it was Tinubu's wife that said, we have a lot of money. We are rich enough not to be concerned with Nigeria's resources. So let everybody come and swear to that oath that they will ensure that what they are going to do when they get to office is, sincere service to this country.
Okay, the government is working with labor unions to introduce a new national minimum wage.
Yeah.
Yes. So how crucial do you think that it is right for the two parties, to create a balance that can go towards the workers' welfare and also for economic stability in the country especially now that the country is going through so much challenges?
Yeah. Well, if the narrative now is that the removal of the subsidy has brought high rate of inflation into the economy, which is a fact. Okay? And therefore, government has responded, or is going to respond, by reaching an agreement with the labor front, employers of labor, and so on and so forth, to ensure that, there is minimum wage or review of wages generally, so that every Nigerian will be able to cope with the existentialities that we are faced with at the moment. That is good, good enough. But again, we have to look at it very critically. I think that the government will also have to assess itself in terms of, do we have the capacity? I don't know what they are going to agree with the labor eventually. Yeah. But the government must go with clean hands, with equity, and come to the negotiation table with the labor front and said, this is what I can afford, and I'm prepared to pay this. And then labor will also see to it that, yes, let us check the balance sheet of the government. Are they telling the truth? And if they are, okay, we are also accepting what government says they can do.
Okay, and of course, the president has clearly stated that he will offer these immediate interventions to reduce the burden, and it is what he can do now. What would you tell Nigerians as regard working together? We talked about collective efforts from every one of us, participation, citizens' participation. We have a role also. Patriotism comes with a lot of sacrifice. And you can be patriotic without sacrifice.
That's right.
So.
That's right. We can't. We have to. This is another level of yardstick to determine whether or not we're serious about the changes the present government wants to bring in. How patriotic are we? How are we prepared to sacrifice? This is the moment that calls for sacrifice from everybody. Yeah. Whether you are, a leader or you are just a follower. If there is anything you can contribute to ensure that there is stability in the country, there is amity, there is peace, we will be able to, weather the storm. Because, I think it's the English people that said, at the end of the tunnel, there could be light.
Yes.
Yes. So it is not going to be, the situation we have found ourselves is, we have never been like this before. or at least it has not been as bad continuously. So it's a phase. So, and we should also be optimistic that this phase will go away.
Yeah.
And therefore, what we need to do is to make sure that necessary sacrifices are made to ensure that we can reclaim our losses. We have lost a lot. But the good thing, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm really particular about this issue of subsidy removal. The president announced on Monday that they have saved
1 trillion.
1 trillion.
Yes.
Even though some people say, what is 1 trillion compared to the value in dollars? But we are talking of Nigeria. 1 trillion can go a long way. Okay? So that, and it means that the subsidy that used to be there was correctly defined as a scam that we have to end. So everybody should give support to the policy measures. And if we now couple this with sacrifice that you mentioned, and also the fact that we plug the avenues through which people get, take this money away for personal use, then I think we will.
Laura, you have a final question. We're rounding up.
Okay. Yes. I would like you to just comment on the opportunities that we have as a country, looking at the policies that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has made. I just want a comment on that, the opportunities.
Well, we have opportunities.
On Nigerians leveraging on these opportunities.
That's what I'm saying. We have opportunities. Opportunities we have are that this country is well endowed, naturally, and in human capital. So what are we waiting for? It's a question now of seeing how we, leverage on these opportunities we have, the resources we have, the generous, allocation, if I may put it that way, that God has given to this country.
Okay.
And we will get it right.
Indeed, we will get it right if we continue to work together. He said it clearly that he has made a solemn pledge to work for you and I, and to improve the welfare and living conditions of Nigerians, which is what keeps him awake day and night. Thank you so much, Professor Nuhu Yaqub, for your contributions and your time on platform. We really do appreciate, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And let's continue to brief for Nigeria, right?
Yeah, yes.
Laraba Mure, she is a reporter with the Abuja Inquirer newspaper. Thank you so much for your time. Always on platform.
Thank you. Thank you for always having me.
Our pleasure. All right, we've been discussing upscaling interventions for good governance. If good governance must thrive, then we must stand united. If you're saying you're patriotic, what sacrifice are you making to be that patriotic Nigerian? Let's do the needful, because together we will continue to stand, but you know what happens when we're divided. I'm Ruth Aguwele, and that's Platform. Bye.